Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm pleased to be joined today by Rachel Donnelly. Rachel is the founder of AfterLight and co-founder of Professionals of After-Loss Services. In this episode, we'll be discussing how we can change the way we think about money and navigating loss. Rachel, welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Tony. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, well, excited to learn more about you and what you're up to. So, to get started, please tell us about yourself. What is your origin story?
Yeah, so thanks for asking. Always happy to share my story, even though it can be, a little hard for people to hear, and can be hard to share. But I grew up in a small town just south of Atlanta, and my dad was the only doctor in town. So grew up a very sort of Mayberry lifestyle growing up, which was great. But unfortunately, my dad became sick when I was 13, and he passed away when I was 16. And being a doctor, my mom was now faced with selling his business, and becoming a widow at a young age. And then I was sort of thrown into this world of having to figure out, okay, now I've got to, my mom has to file for Social Security benefits and things like that. So learning about some of those monetary financial decisions, at a young age. And then fast forward several years later, after I had gone to college and gotten married, my mom unfortunately got sick and passed away within a couple of weeks after being diagnosed with cancer. And I had just started a brand new job within which I had no time off in the first 90 days. And my mom died within the first 60 days of this new job. And I had two small children at the time, had just moved into a new house. Like I said, was, recently married and was very much in sort of the prime of my life, and was now facing having to settle my mom's estate since my father had already passed away. And also, my mom was in charge of taking care of her brother, my uncle, who was in latter stages of Parkinson's disease and lived in a different state and was a solo ager. So now I had not only to settle my mom's estate, but to be in charge of taking care of an aging loved one and become his healthcare proxy, his financial power of attorney, and be in charge of paying his bills, and everything that came with that. And to say I was overwhelmed was just is just the understatement of the century. And with, starting that new job, I had no time off to manage all of those affairs, to manage the affairs in what I call the business of death. And I talk about that a lot in my business, but what I refer to as the business of death are those unavoidable logistics that exist when you lose a loved one, and we all have to take care of when we lose someone. And having no time off, I was trying to do that, during the day when I was at work. You need to call banks and do a lot of these things during normal business hours. And I just could no longer carry that load. So I left this job within 8 months after starting to settle my mom's estate, focus on getting my uncle's affairs in order, and then to maybe take a breather after now losing both of my parents, at a young age and living with that reality. This really inspired me, compelled me to create a business that with a mission of helping individuals, helping executors with these unavoidable logistics. I wondered when I was going through this, why wasn't there a project manager? Why wasn't there, a wedding coordinator, but for death? Somebody who could help me streamline all of these logistics and these tasks, and help me sort of get on my feet and quarterback everything. So I created it. And I said, why doesn't this exist? Necessity is the mother of invention. So I created AfterLight, After Loss Professionals, to help overwhelmed executors manage the unavoidable logistics of after loss.
Yeah, well, I think, that is a big question, that I don't know. I started in the life insurance business. Maybe part of it is just people don't want to talk about death because, with a wedding planner, it's it's fun, it's the future. Um, but death is, it's scary. And
Absolutely. It's scary, and I understand why we avoid why there wasn't somebody to help me with this, because you're right. Nobody wants to get into this business where you're helping someone at sometimes the worst time of their life. And it helps, or it compels you to think about your own mortality. And nobody wants to think about that. We all face discomfort at the prospect of our own mortality. So being comfortable in that space is sort of your first obstacle. And I was very comfortable in that space, and was just blown away at this life transition that we're all going to experience, that there wasn't more logistical support in something we're all going to experience. Like I said, not all of us are going to get married, have a child, buy a house, where there seems to be a lot of this project management style support, but we are all pretty much going to experience the death of someone close by in our life. And why don't we have a better network of professionals, and a continuum of care to help people at one of the hardest moments of their life?
yeah, no, I think it's wonderful what you're doing, and I think it's so necessary. As you point out, it is something, I've gone through it with my mother. You know, my father-in-law. I mean, we could probably take the rest of the podcast and name all the people
We could.
done.
Yeah.
So, but I think you hit on it. It's facing it. So how do you help people, or what have you seen been successful for people to maybe not be comfortable with their mortality, but just be comfortable with even thinking about talking about it?
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's the first goal that I have in speaking to people is saying, let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. This is hard stuff to think about. I don't want to think about dying myself. Like that's going to be a real bummer. So let's go ahead and address that this is uncomfortable and this is not something fun that people want to prepare for. Having said that, this is your mess. This is your life. This is your legacy. And you need to take care of all of that, help prepare, help plan, help take care of your own mess to not leave your family with what I like to call a flaming dumpster fire. And now, helping executors manage these logistics and the things that we see over and over again, have sort of come up with this curriculum, if you will, or planning mechanisms to help people address a lot of the knowledge gaps that I see. And once you expose some of those pain points and people understand the gravity of that, it can help inspire them and incentivize them to say, you're right, I need to take care of this. I need to kick this into action. And plan for my own mortality.
Definitely. Well, that was, I mean, really at the core of why I started the whole get ready thing with my first get ready planner, which is about getting everything together is, from my experience in financial services, is people don't even have an inventory
Yeah.
of their different financial services. And it's always a mess for the executors. And as corny as it is from the life insurance industry, but a lot of this planning is a gift for those you leave behind.
Yeah, absolutely. It is the greatest gift you can give your loved one. What I say to people over and over again is that your estate is not just what you own, it's also what you owe. So that leaving family not knowing about what you owe and what you own and what's out there, leaving with that mess to navigate and do sort of that inventory that you talked about, it gives them such a leg up in settling your affairs and getting back to the things that matter, and not spending time, like I said, searching for accounts, searching for debts, having creditors call. That just helps propel people to be in such a better place in a time when they are grieving you, when they are missing you, and they're going through one of the hardest times, of their lives. And if they're sitting there guessing, scratching their heads, not knowing anything about your life, about you, about your story, about what was important to you, about what you wanted, it can really compound your grief process.
Oh, 100%. And then you don't have access to some of the assets that could help because I've seen it, over and over with life insurance policies. And I can't remember how many billions of dollars there are in unclaimed life insurance policies. And yeah, some of it is the insurance companies could work a little bit harder at actually paying them out. But the majority of times it's just people didn't even know the policies existed.
Yeah,
So how are
I
you supposed
forgot
to
how
make a
many.
claim?
Yeah, I forgot how many billions of dollars go unclaimed in life insurance policies and other assets that are out there, bank accounts and reimbursements, accounts with exchange value, but it's overwhelming and it's real, actual money with, you know, that has value, to your family. But yeah, you bring up a great point. It's not only about doing the typical and traditional estate planning, putting those plans into place, your will, possibly a trust, if that makes sense for you, your financial power of attorney, your advanced care, healthcare directives, but making sure your family has access to funds to be able to pay immediate expenses is you won't believe the number of people who call me and say, my loved one just died. I had someone call me last week. This poor woman, her adult son had died unexpectedly and tragically. I don't know what happened. And they paid over $30,000 for his funeral and burial. And she was now so worried about how she was going to pay those bills, and she had to pay those out of her pocket. I don't know the circumstances. I don't know what led them to those decisions and making those plans, but that's a lot of money to have an unexpected $30,000 bill now on your plate to have to navigate, as well as everything else that may be lurking behind the surface of your loved one's estate. So not giving them the access to those funds to say, okay, here's this to pay immediate expenses, any bills that are need to be paid right then, leaves your family shouldering that burden, which can be huge for them.
Yeah, no, 100%. And a big part of it comes back to communication. Also, just telling, your heirs or whoever's your executor is, whatever role somebody has, is that the documents exist, that the accounts exist. So many people are like, well, I don't want to have that conversation. I don't want to communicate. But if you don't tell someone about it, it doesn't do any good. Even if you have all this stuff set up, if they don't know that there's a trust
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
assets. So,
And I've seen it on both sides. I've seen parents who don't want to have these conversations with their adult children. I've seen adult children who don't want to hear this from their aging parents. They want to not have those conversations. They think that it will somehow cause that to happen sooner rather than later, which, who knows when that's going to happen for all of us. But yes, the first thing I tell people is it's not just about those traditional documents that you need to have in place, but having an inventory of what you owe, what you own, your accounts, and how to access things is so paramount. That organization is one of the greatest gifts you can give your loved ones. And then on the same side, if you find yourself as the executor, whether there's been a communication or not, taking that time to get organized, pencils down, let's take a moment to do an inventory of everything. Let's create a spreadsheet. Let's get everything organized. Before you start acting, take a moment to get organized so you really have sort of a broad brush perspective of what you're working with.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you 100%. And I think, I want to highlight something, especially what you said earlier, that a lot of this is about the emotional and dealing with the human element, that it's not just the mechanical money stuff, that it's thinking about, well, having this conversation with my parents is going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But if you don't do it, it's like any other thing you put off, it tends to get worse the longer you put it off, because maybe your parents start, losing some of their memory or their competency, and you hadn't had that conversation while they were able to. So, you can't put these things off, or, you do have a sudden death or disability or whatever. So, I wanted to ask you about something. You've introduced a new service. I know it's only localized to Atlanta, but what are the legacy scans?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And yeah, so that's something that we're doing. So about, about 65%, I'm sorry, of our services are in that after loss consulting, helping overwhelmed executors from wherever they are, whether they're in Atlanta or beyond. And the same with our legacy planning and organization. That can be for anyone, regardless
Oh,
of where
okay,
they live. Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. But our legacy scans, it's something that's new, that just came out of a need that I felt that was really there in mine personally. When I'm working with overwhelmed executors, one of their tasks is a lot of times liquidating the tangible personal property within a house and getting rid of those items, finding out their value, who's going to be a good buyer for things, but then also saying goodbye to a childhood home, their grandmother's home, their aunt's home, what have you. And that can be extremely painful and extremely hard. And that was one of the most painful moments for me, was getting rid of my beloved grandmother's home in Eastern Tennessee that had been in our family since 1890, liquidating all of that
Wow.
property and going through just the countless memories and the countless items and knickknacks that were in the house. But we've offer a service now through AfterLight, and it's using Matterport technology, which a lot of real estate agents utilize to do virtual tours of
Okay.
property. And a lot of them used it during COVID, which it was a great tool. But the word that Matterport uses is digital twin, which, we don't use that a lot because that doesn't necessarily translate. But what we're calling a legacy scan is a digital scan of the inside of a home. It's interactive. You can and it can be utilized and captured in perpetuity to do that internal scan of a home and everything, all of its belongings as it is in that stamp in time when you do the actual photography in the scan. But I utilize it with clients to allow them to not only then capture that home, but the items within it. So, for instance, I have a client right now whose uncle made him the executor, and part of his job is to do an inventory of all of the
Hmm.
items within the house. And there are a lot of beneficiaries. So the attorney said, you need to be very diligent and thorough in your inventory of all of the items. Well, we thought this is perfect. By doing this scan, this Matterport scan, we will be able to capture everything in the house. Now, not drawers, but everything
Hmm.
that's out there in the house throughout the entire home. So we can be able to go back, look at things. You can add notes, and you can also share this link with beneficiaries and heirs for them to view, and then say, oh my goodness, I forgot about that painting that was in my grandmother's room. I would love to have that. So if you live out of state, or the beneficiaries lived out of state,
Hmm.
weren't able to come back home to sort of, tag the things that they wanted to keep within the house. This technology, this service allows you to do that.
That is really cool. And it's so exciting that, that this is a great use of technology to further it. I mean, the simple advice is to go around and take pictures of everything in every room, which also helps you if your house ever burns down or you have some other
Yeah,
catastrophic event. And that's where I could see a legacy scan, not only being for a legacy purpose, but, if you do have a property and casualty claim, a wildfire, a flood,
absolutely.
earthquake,
Yeah.
whatever it is, you have that proof to file an insurance claim. So, that's where I think people often miss out too, is that you can think about this stuff on a continuum. Is that you may be doing it for the purpose of legacy planning, but it oftentimes checks more than one box on your
Absolutely.
financial journey. So
Yeah.
it's when you think about the stuff, it's, put in my shameless plug here. That's what the Get Ready method does. It takes you
Mhm.
through all areas of your financial life and continue to go through it so you can think about it like, okay, well, have I done my home inventory?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it helps in this area and it helps in multiple other areas. And there's so many other things in our financial life that can do double duty or actually don't have any purpose whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
understanding
I
that.
mean, there are countless you know, opportunities for this, and ways that you could utilize this for a business. Like you said, if someone owned a business and they need to do an inventory of all of the contents, within the business, say it's an antique store or something like that.
Hmm.
Or but you could do it the same thing for loss, or a property loss, a fire, or other damage. You could do it for pre-planning to say, hey, we're going to do this beforehand, and send it to all the grandkids for them to decide what it is they want to keep while they're at college, or what have you. There are so many countless uses for this technology, but most of all, I think of it, as such a great way to preserve that feeling that you would get when you would go into your grandmother's home. And my goodness, how wonderful that would be to be able to go back into my grandmother's
Hmm.
home and the way that it was, and feel those feelings and experience the inside of that home. So, like I said, it's just a great tool that we're hoping that many of our Atlanta area clients will utilize, and hopefully it'll inspire others who already use this technology to offer this as a service within their geographic regions.
Yeah, no, it would be great. And I think that leads into the next question, is the PALS network. What
Yeah.
is the PALS network?
Yeah. So when I started AfterLight, I really struggled what to call myself. People still don't know what to call me. They'll say, "Oh, she's a death concierge. She's an I've heard people call me afterlife consultant," which I'm like, I'm not a medium, but okay. People call me a death project manager, an executor's assistant. But that was one thing, is I really wanted to standardize, what I was calling myself. And I found miraculously other women who had very similar businesses to mine in different cities. And we found each other, started networking informally. And we said, we think we really have something here. We'd love to create the industry organization for what we're doing, and really to elevate us, to create industry awareness, and to establish this as a profession. So PALS, Professionals of After Law Services, was born in 2021 with our first goal to create what we were calling ourselves, our profession, and we came up with after loss professional. And within that, we wanted to create, like I said, the industry standards, the best practices, the code of ethics for us to follow, and to provide education, training, membership, and business partnerships. We have now created a proprietary training program. We've taught people from all over the world how to do what we do. And not only for those who want to go out and start their own after loss service, such as mine, but want to add this as an additional service within their existing business. So we've had, senior move managers, professional organizers, patient advocates, social workers, all types of people take our program or take our training program in order to add this as an ancillary service. And we now do a training program twice a year, teaching people how to do what we do. And we'll also be having our first annual conference this year in Atlanta. So we're so excited to finally have our first gathering in real life of our members, our trainees, those who are after loss curious members, to have a gathering to really kick off this passion-driven industry.
Well, that is awesome. Well, first of all, congratulations on building such a movement. I mean, that's amazing. And I think for other people who are passionate about something is, that, you can do this is when you have a vision and you've spotted a challenge. I mean, which is, this is coming from your heart. You're not looking at this and going, this is a great industry and I'm going to make tons of money. That may happen. And I wish you much success, but it's exciting because you're doing this for passion and to satisfy a mission and to help people. And I think, for so many of us, when we're struggling in our jobs or our careers is, that you can pursue your passions and make a career out of it. And I think that is so cool. And, for everybody watching and listening, as always, there will be links to the professional
AfterLossPros.com is how you can. Yes, no worries.
Rachel says it. I will struggle with it, but there will definitely be a link that is correct.
Hey, that is fine.
So you'll definitely be able to. So, Rachel,
fine.
I think we had a little blip. So if you're watching or listening, I apologize for the blip. But I think, the PALS Network, this training would be really helpful for those in the audience who are life insurance professionals, financial planners, trust officers, anybody who is dealing with this process. This is a value-added service that you can provide to your clients that, unfortunately, as Rachel pointed out earlier, is everybody's going to need it.
Yeah.
At one point. So, this is so interesting. So I want to make sure we get into the get ready questions, but I do have one other quick question for you before we go in there is, what is the first thing people should think about when it comes to loss and the ensuing overwhelm?
Yeah, I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think it's trying to get organized, as best you can. Is, whether your loved one had a will or didn't have a will and didn't have, estate plans in place, sort of putting your pencil, or, well, you want to take your pencil up, you want to get a pencil in a hand, maybe with a spreadsheet, but trying to get organized. Sit down and make a list as best you can of what assets they had, what liabilities they had, debts, what accounts they had, what email addresses they may have used to access, those accounts. And so once you start writing those things down, this is going to help you come up with a methodical plan. Okay, how are we going to deal with these? And how are we going to close, transfer, and archive according to their wishes, alongside an attorney, and sort of having all of that work done is going to help propel your work as an executor and just make it a lot better if you go ahead and get organized as best you can.
Yeah, and it's just like packing for, well, it's not really like packing for a vacation, but when you pack for a vacation, if you're going somewhere where the weather is warm, you're going to pack shorts. If you're going somewhere weather is cold, you're going to pack appropriate gear. But but the first thing you do is you organize what you're going to pack and you make that list. And whatever you have, and whatever you don't have, you
Yeah,
figure out how to supplement along the way. And so I
absolutely.
think that's powerful advice. So let's get into the get ready questions. The first one is, what's one simple thing you can do each year to set yourself up for financial success?
Well, I think that a lot of people do their estate planning. They, execute their will, their financial power of attorney, maybe their healthcare directives, and then they don't revisit it. They think it's a one and done. I think reviewing your estate and your legacy plan annually. Has anything in your life changed? Are your beneficiaries up to date? Have you moved? Have you sold property? Does your will reflect your wishes and who you want to receive, your part of your estate? So doing that annual check-in every year is, I think, so crucial in making sure that your estate is executed in the way that you want it to be carried out.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. And I did the majority of my career was doing life insurance consulting work, and I don't know how many times, I saw ex-spouses as a beneficiary, or people didn't have like their child who arrived, 5 years after the rest of the kids that
Yeah.
are part of the estate plan. And so, this stuff is so important because life changes,
Life
and you have to have
changes,
to.
yeah. And so much of our lives are in a cloud, on a device, online. And so don't forget to include all of your digital assets, everything that you're
Hmm.
accessing digitally. Not only your bank accounts, your IRAs, your 401ks, but also things with sentimental value. How are you keeping your photos? Maybe that manuscript you've been working on. How are you keeping track of all those videos of your grandkids? Where are those stored and organized? And then things with exchange value. You may have a lot of airline points. What's going to happen to those? So thinking through not only, getting yourself organized, revisiting your plan, but then how are those your digital assets being reflected in your plan, making sure that that's updated annually. It's the new player at the estate planning table.
Definitely. And maybe we should do a follow-up episode just about digital assets.
Oh, I,
Uh,
I would I would love to I will nerd out about that all day long. So I'd love to.
well, so for our viewers today and listeners, is watch for an upcoming episode on digital assets. The next question is, what is one habit that people can change when it comes to their money?
Oh my gracious. I think we get in a habit of sometimes not seeing value in investing in things that are really worth investing in. And in this case, I think it would be solid estate planning advice, working with an experienced and trusted estate planning attorney. I will see people spend so much money to go to, the Super Bowl tickets, or buying,
Mhm.
a new Stanley Cup, the latest and greatest, but then not taking the time to invest in a comprehensive, holistic estate plan according to your wishes, your goals, your makeup, your family circumstances is so key. And trying to get a form off the internet, or trying to DIY it. Invest in yourself, invest in your legacy, invest in your family's future, and do it right and get some good advice. I can't recommend it enough.
Well, that's actually a mic drop, although I have a few more questions for you, is to do it right. And I think that's something we forget about with our money. is there so much advice out there that we're overwhelmed. TikToks, blog articles, podcasts is, you have to do these things right, because if you don't do it right, and, we've been talking about this whole episode, if you don't name the right beneficiaries or you don't do this the right way, um, there's going to be challenges, but it's not too hard to do it the right way. It's about doing your research,
Yeah.
making a checklist, getting back to the word organized, and
Yeah.
then following through.
Absolutely. There can be the amount of information out there can be overwhelming. Ask questions, ask so many questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And I think that's going to help you get to the place you need to be is by asking questions of the professionals that you're leveraging. Interview at least 3 estate planning attorneys. Find out who works for you, for your budget, for your personality, for what the plan that they have in store for you. And I think that will just help carry you where you need to go.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you. And that's what I encourage people to do is remember, advisors work for you. You are paying for their time. You have the right to ask some questions. And the only way you're going to get good information is by continuing to ask questions until you are satisfied with the answer. So I love that advice. So the next question is, what money myth are you trying to break?
Oh, gracious. Well, I'm always thinking about death. It's a little weird, but I'm always framing this in the death. But, one of the biggest myths that I hear so much is when I ask people if they've done their own estate planning, is they'll say, I'll be dead. Why do I care? And that makes me so mad and so furious. And I say, because it will matter to your family. It will be expensive to your family. Your time is valuable. Their time is valuable. And to expect someone to not, to clean up the mess that you couldn't be bothered to make plans for while you were here on this earth and you knew better, that makes me really mad. So it's going to mean an awful lot to those you say you love. So, that money myth of I'll be dead, who cares? It'll be expensive and it'll be really hard to those who are left behind holding the bag.
And unfortunately, that will be your legacy or
Yes.
part of your legacy.
You don't
And
want your family cussing you under your breath as you're gone. You want them to look back with love and respect that you took the time and you cared enough to make plans ahead. With that said, there are times it's not possible. Things happen. I know that things go sideways fast. But if you're listening to this, I compel you to go get your affairs in order today.
yeah, take the time. It's
Mhm.
something that you can do. And I think that's the other thing, that I'd love to stress is that anybody can do this. This is for everybody.
Yeah.
This is not for wealthy people. You don't have to be wealthy to do estate planning.
No, you don't. And if you owe or you own, guess what? You have an estate. And another myth when people say my affairs are simple, simple for whom is my follow-up question. So sometimes people think, oh, well, my affairs are simple. It'll be fine for them. Sometimes even closing the Xfinity account can be the most complicated, hard thing and leaves people pulling their hair out. So simple for whom is my question.
Yeah, calling the cable company, not the easiest thing.
Oh, no. It is not. It is not.
So, let's get out the time machine for a minute.
Oh,
What
gracious.
advice would you give your younger self if you could go back in time knowing what you know now about money?
Oh, gracious. I mean, not having my parents for as long as I wanted, I wish I'd had more conversations with them about, what their legacy meant to them. And like I said, it's more than just your money, but what they had built, what they had spent their life culminating, and what that meant to them in terms of the next generation, and sort of, creating generational wealth or creating that legacy. And I wish I had had more in-depth, um, intentional conversations around that with both of my family members, and really knowing and understanding the makeup of them and what was important to them.
Yeah, and it's so important because the one thing you didn't say was, I wish I'd known what their investment application was. You
Yeah,
know, or,
yes, yes, yeah.
you
Um,
know, that
yeah,
that it is all these other things. It's about what their wishes are, what their dreams are. You talked about the family photos earlier.
yeah,
Because those are the memories, like you talked about going back to see your grandmother's house. Yeah,
yeah.
even if you just take photos, um, that's so important. So, Rachel, to wrap up, what is your number one tip on changing the way we think about money?
Well, life is expensive and so is death.
Ah, I
So
love it.
please think about that yes, it's expensive to live. It's also expensive to die. And it's even more expensive if you don't plan ahead and make your wishes known. Share that with those you love, get organized, have those crucial conversations. Or else it's going to be a lot more expensive for your family after you're gone. And that hard-earned money that you've spent a lifetime culminating, even more of it's going to be chipped away because you didn't plan ahead.
That is so awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. So, to wrap up, where can people learn more about you, follow what you're up to, learn about Afterlight
Yeah.
and and pals?
Yeah. So if you want to reach out to me at Afterlight, my email or my website is myafterlight.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Rachel Donnelly. We're on Instagram at myafterlight. We're on Facebook. We're on all the things. So, but you can reach out to hello at myafterlight.com if you want to schedule a free discovery call for us to talk through your unique situation. We always try to have a 30-minute conversation with people and come up with a customized roadmap for your unique affairs. And if you want to learn more about PALS, we'd love for you to come join us on in this industry. And that is at afterlosspros.com, Afterloss Pros on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
That is awesome. So, and for everybody watching and listening, as always, you'll be able to find all these links in the show notes. So you can definitely get in touch with Rachel and find out what she's up to. So, Rachel, thanks very much for your time and for sharing your insights today.
Thanks so much for having me, Tony. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, this was an awesome conversation. And thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning in to this episode of the Get Ready Money podcast. If you learned something today, please be sure to share this episode and to subscribe. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.